Imagine you're sitting down to study. You've got your books in front of you, your laptop is open, but somehow your mind keeps drifting. Maybe your phone pings with a notification, or the thought of what to have for dinner pops into your head. 5 minutes into studying and you're already distracted. Sound familiar? We've all been there, and it's so easy to feel like we're just not cut out for it. But here's the thing. Studying effectively is a skill, and just like any skill, it can be learned and mastered. In fact, there's a study routine that never fails to give you an unfair advantage. Now, I know you might be thinking, but there are so many methods out there. How do I know which one works for me? That's exactly what we're going to dive into today. I'm going to break down a proven study routine that not only helps you get smarter, but also makes studying feel more natural and less overwhelming. Before we jump into the specifics, let me ask you a question. What's your ultimate goal when you study? Is it to memorize facts, get through chapters, or do you want to retain information, truly understand it, and be able to apply it when it counts? If you're aiming for the latter, which I hope you are, then you're in the right place. The routine I'm going to share isn't about cramming or pulling all-nighters. It's about working smarter, not harder. In the next few minutes, I'll guide you through a method that has helped countless people get the most out of their study sessions. And don't worry, you don't need any fancy tools or gadgets. Just a little focus, some intentional effort, and the willingness to apply what I'm about to share. Trust me, this will give you the unfair advantage you've been looking for. Now let's start with the first key element of this routine: breaking your study time into manageable chunks. You've probably heard of the Pomodoro technique. You know, working in blocks of 25 minutes with short breaks in between. Well, there's a reason it works. Our brains are not designed to focus for long, uninterrupted periods. We start losing concentration after about 20 minutes or so. The key here is to work in intervals, whether that's 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then taking a 5-minute break. During your break, stand up, stretch, hydrate, and let your mind wander. It's important to give yourself that time to recharge. The beauty of this method is that it prevents burnout. If you study for hours without a break, your brain will start to shut down, making it harder to absorb information. By breaking things into shorter intervals, you give yourself a better chance at retaining knowledge. And here's the kicker. When you know you're working in focused blocks of time, you'll be amazed at how much more productive you are. It's almost like a game where you're racing against the clock to beat the timer, which keeps things interesting. But here's the part that often trips people up: staying focused during those 20 minutes. So let's talk about how to make the most of that time. I want you to do something a little different next time you study. Remove distractions entirely. Yes, that means putting your phone on airplane mode, closing unnecessary tabs on your laptop, and turning off all notifications. It's like going into study mode where nothing can pull your attention away. In our hyper-connected world, it's easy to get distracted by the tiniest buzz or beep. But every time your phone lights up, it takes your attention away from the task at hand. So make a habit of creating an environment that is 100% focused on studying during your study blocks. By doing this, you'll see an improvement in how much you can absorb in a short amount of time. And the best part? The time flies by because you're truly immersed in what you're learning. Now, why does all of this work? It's simple. Our brains are much more efficient when we focus deeply for short bursts and then rest. Think of it like a marathon runner who paces themselves instead of sprinting the entire race. This method allows you to stay fresh and retain more information over the long haul. And the best part? Consistency is key. When you practice this routine day in and day out, you'll find that you're able to study for longer periods without getting mentally exhausted. All right, now that you've got a solid start, let's move on to the next element of the routine that'll elevate your study game. But before we dive into that, think about how you can implement these chunks of focused study time today. What's one subject or topic you can dedicate 20 minutes to right now? Free from distractions. Let's keep this momentum going. You're already on your way to mastering this study routine. Now that you've got the idea of breaking your study time into focused blocks, let's take it a step further. Because as you probably know, it's not just about how long you study, it's about how well you study during those intervals. So let's dive into the next part of the routine that makes all the difference: active learning. It's tempting to think that simply reading through your textbook or listening to a lecture is enough. You might feel like you're putting in the hours, But if you're not actively engaging with the material, you're not going to retain it. Active learning is where you really start to turn that knowledge into something you can apply. But what does active learning actually look like? Think about this for a second. Have you ever found yourself reading a page over and over, yet by the time you finish, you realize you haven't absorbed a thing? That's because your brain isn't actively engaging with the material. You're just passively letting it wash over you. To avoid this, here's the key. Ask yourself questions as you study. This could mean anything from, what's the main point of this section? To, how can I apply this concept to a real-life situation? When you're actively questioning the material, you're processing it on a deeper level. And when you answer your own questions, you're not just memorizing, you're actually learning and understanding. This is the kind of engagement that builds long-term knowledge. So the next time you study, take a moment after every paragraph or page to pause and reflect. What do you actually know from that section? Could you explain it to a friend? Could you teach it to someone else? The more you practice these active learning techniques, the more natural they'll become. But active learning doesn't have to be all mental gymnastics. Take notes as you study, but do it with intention. Instead of just writing down everything the book says, try summarizing it in your own words. When you write, you're forcing yourself to reframe the information, which helps with retention. You can also try drawing diagrams or mind maps to visualize relationships between ideas. The more you can see how the information connects, the stronger your understanding will be. And here's a trick I love. Test yourself regularly. If you're reading a chapter, close the book and try to recall as much as you can without looking at your notes. Testing yourself in this way helps you identify gaps in your knowledge and reinforces what you do know. This doesn't mean you should cram right before the test, but practicing retrieval like this regularly can make a huge difference in your ability to retain and recall information. Let's pause here and reflect for a moment. Are you using these active learning techniques as part of your study routine? If not, try adding them in today. It might feel awkward at first, but trust me, it's one of the most powerful ways to study smarter, not harder. Now, there's one last key piece to this routine that will make sure you don't just understand the material, but actually retain it long term. This brings me to the concept of spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is the idea of reviewing material at increasing intervals over time. It's scientifically proven to help you retain information much longer than cramming everything into one session. Imagine this. After learning something new, you review it after a day, then a few days later, and then a week later. Each time you revisit it, you reinforce your memory, making it stick. I know. Spaced repetition sounds like a lot of work, right? But here's the beauty of it. You can use apps like Anki or Quizlet to automate the process. These tools will remind you to review material at just the right times, based on how well you remember it. So instead of cramming the night before an exam, you'll be reviewing in small chunks over weeks and months. This way, when the test day finally comes, the material is fresh in your mind and you're ready to crush it. And here's the kicker. Spaced repetition doesn't just apply to facts and formulas. It works for everything from learning a new language to mastering complex theories. The more you practice this technique, the more effortlessly information will stay in your long-term memory. So, how do you implement this into your routine? Well, after you've studied something, make it a point to review it the next day. Then, do a quick review a couple of days later. And after that, space out the reviews over longer intervals, maybe after a week, then a month. This way, the material becomes ingrained in your memory and you won't have to scramble to relearn it. The combination of active learning and spaced repetition is incredibly powerful. When you use them together, you're not just memorizing for the moment, you're ensuring that the information stays with you for the long haul. So get into the habit of testing yourself, summarizing what you've learned, and spacing out your reviews. I know this might sound like a lot to juggle, but trust me, the payoff is huge. Once you get into the rhythm of this study routine, studying will feel like a breeze. It will stop being something you dread and start being something you look forward to because you'll see the results. You'll feel confident, prepared, and capable of taking on anything. Now let's move on to the final part of this study routine. It's one last strategy that ties everything together, and it's a game changer when it comes to maintaining your focus and staying motivated. But before we dive into that, let's take a moment to think about how you're going to implement active learning and spaced repetition into your study sessions today. Ready to give it a try? Great, let's keep going. All right, we've covered some heavy hitters so far. How to break your study time into manageable chunks, how to incorporate active learning, and how to make spaced repetition your secret weapon. Now let's wrap it all up with a strategy that will tie everything together and ensure your study routine not only works, but works consistently. This final point is all about creating an environment that maximizes your focus and motivation. Think about this. How often do you sit down to study only to find yourself distracted by your phone, the TV, or random thoughts about what's for dinner? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you're studying, but you're really just scrolling through Instagram or staring out the window. The trick to staying focused and fully engaged is to eliminate distractions before you even start studying. Now you might be thinking, that sounds easier said than done. And I get it. In today's world, distractions are everywhere. But here's the thing. You have control over your environment. This might mean putting your phone in another room or using apps like Forest or Focus Will, which help you stay on task by blocking distracting sites or providing focus-enhancing music. You can even try using the Pomodoro technique here. Work for 25 minutes, then take a 5-minute break. These simple tricks can help you stay in the zone and make your study time way more productive. But it's not just about blocking distractions. It's also about setting yourself up for success before you even sit down to study. Think about what you need: a clean desk, a comfortable chair, the materials you'll need at arm's reach. Do you ever try to study in a messy, cluttered space? It can be hard to concentrate when there's chaos around you. Taking 5 minutes before each study session to get organized and create a comfortable, clutter-free environment can make a huge difference. Another part of creating the right environment is setting a clear intention for each study session. When you sit down, know exactly what you want to accomplish. Are you reviewing a chapter? Working on practice problems? Writing an essay? Whatever it is, be clear about it. This clarity helps you stay on track, and it also gives you a sense of accomplishment once you check off those goals. But the best part of all this is when you build consistency into your routine. We've talked about how to study smarter, not harder, but now let's talk about how to keep the momentum going. One of the best ways to stay consistent is to make studying a habit. The more you commit to showing up at the same time every day, the less you'll have to rely on motivation to get you started. Habits are powerful because they become automatic. And once your study routine becomes something you just do, you'll notice how much easier it gets. Now, I know this sounds like a lot to juggle, but trust me, once you get into the groove of it, it all starts to feel natural. The more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. You'll no longer be wasting time worrying about whether you're doing it right. Instead, you'll know that you've got the perfect routine to help you achieve your goals. So let's review everything we've covered. First, you've got the power of focused study blocks. No distractions, just full-on engagement. Second, you've learned how to make active learning a cornerstone of your routine by questioning, summarizing, and teaching the material. And third, we added spaced repetition into the mix to lock in long-term retention. Finally, we wrapped it all up by creating a study environment that sets you up for success and helps you build consistency through habit. Now, I know you're thinking, that sounds great, but how do I make sure I stick with it? And here's the key: start small. You don't have to overhaul your entire study routine overnight. Pick one thing from today's video. Maybe it's active learning or setting up a distraction-free study zone, and start incorporating that into your routine. Once you've got that down, add something else. It's all about gradual progress, not perfection. I can promise you this: if you stick to this study routine, you'll start to see improvements in your learning. You'll feel more prepared, more confident, and more in control of your progress. And remember, the key isn't just working harder, it's working smarter. It's about setting yourself up for success and giving yourself that unfair advantage. So, what's your next step? Let me know in the comments what part of this study routine you're most excited to try out. Or, if you've already used some of these strategies, share your experience. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can keep learning with us. Remember, becoming a more efficient and effective learner is easier than you think. Take action today, and before you know it, you'll be achieving things you once thought were out of reach. Keep pushing, stay focused, and remember, you've got this. Until next time.